kick on to another subject. We've only got half an hour. It's a totally different subject, which is vaping. I saw an article from you about 8 years ago in, I think it was The Guardian, a pro-vaping
Back when they
article.
published me.
Back when they published you, yeah. And I wondered if you were still a vapor, what your thoughts were about vaping, but also in particular if you've been keeping abreast of what's been happening with vaping, particularly in America. Because whilst here in the UK we have government and public health agencies that are, broadly speaking, pretty pro-vaping, that is certainly not true in America, or indeed large parts of the world. In fact, things are going backwards in terms of just general public's understanding of the relative risks. So we had Public Health England saying that e-cigarettes are at least 95% safer than smoking, whereas in America 10 years ago, people actually had a relatively good idea of what the risks were. They just assumed that vaping was a lot safer than smoking, and they were right, even if they didn't have any evidence to hand. But now, the figures are quite shocking. Something like 65% of people in America think that vaping is either as dangerous or more dangerous than smoking, and that's a big rise on even a few years ago. So I don't know if you. Well, I'll ask you a few questions. Are you still enjoying vaping, and have you been following the politics of it?
Yes, I'm still enjoying it. I'm especially grateful for the technology because my husband was a smoker since he was 19, a pretty heavy smoker, and it made me fear for widowhood, honestly. I want him to stick around. And when he started vaping, it took him 2 weeks to give up tobacco, and he's never had any since. And that's miraculous. And so I feel that I may have won for myself several more years of married life. And that's not a small debt to a simple technology. And I spent a certain amount of time in the States, and therefore I know what's been going on. It's not some kind of weird, miasma of ignorance that's just infected the US population in their imagining that vaping is dangerous, or even more so than smoking tobacco. It has been a concerted campaign. And I honestly think there's an element of the punitive here. When vaping came along, it enraged the anti-tobacco lobby. And this is a fanatical lobby. No restriction is severe enough. They tried to bring in laws to keep you from smoking on your own balcony, or even in your own apartment, and on beaches and in the middle of the wilderness, where the chance of harming anyone else with passive smoke is immeasurably wee, right? So these people are completely nuts. And then along came vaping, and it made it possible for smokers to no longer get all those horrible health consequences that justify all this fanaticism. It is because smoking tobacco causes cancer. And then suddenly they weren't getting cancer causing toxicity, and they were still having fun. They were still enjoying themselves. They were still having the smoking experience. And so that they could stop smoking tobacco and still have that enjoyment, the pleasure of having nicotine taken into your lungs. Because one of the things that is under advertised is that nicotine is not a dangerous drug. It is what makes you addicted to tobacco, but it is not in and of itself a harmful substance. And the tobacco lobby just hated this, and went out to squelch it. because you're not supposed to enjoy yourself when you quit smoking. It's supposed to be horrible.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, people often ask me why so many countries have gone nuts about it, or so many like public health bodies have gone nuts about it, and that's largely the answer I give. I think there's a huge level of basic puritanism to it. I also think there's an element that these guys had their plan, that they were going to stamp out tobacco one bit at a time, each bit probably more painful than the last, but they would get there in the end and then achieve prohibition and e-cigarettes and other reduced nicotine.
Well, this is one of their favorite arguments. It's not an argument, actually. It's pathetic. We don't want to re-normalize smoking. Well, nobody's re-normalizing smoking tobacco. The cigarette is a very different thing. I mean, this doesn't even look like a cigarette. And in fact, I think one of the smartest things that the vaping industry did was to stop making them look like cigarettes. They're the very early ones. You'll remember they even made them white with orange.
They were rubbish. The reason they changed that is because they just didn't have the fire.
Well, they didn't work. They were, as you say, they were rubbish. So the technology changed. It's not the same thing. So it doesn't renormalize smoking at all. And I just think that it was a technology that came along that was inconvenient for a lobby that has in itself become its own little industry.
Yeah.
And it upset the apple cart. And there's really no reason you shouldn't be able to vape on planes, for example, but you can't. When vaping first came in the UK, you used to be able to use them in restaurants. Do you remember that? Restaurants and bars?
Yeah, there were no rules anywhere.
Right. I'm a little curious. I haven't kept up with this, but is there any law against vaping in restaurants and bars? A law? Or is this just the establishments deciding that it upsets the customers?
There's no limit on where you can vape anywhere in the UK whatsoever. It's purely private train companies, private restaurants, private cinemas just saying. The thing that annoys me is that you get these signs saying no smoking, including e-cigarettes.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't mind so much if they said no smoking and also no vaping. It's the idea that you smoke an e-cigarette, which I find annoying. If you get told off, you can't smoke that in here, sir. I'm not smoking, it's vaping.
Yeah.
Totally different. I know it's only a word, but these things matter because they are totally different.
Well, most importantly, there is zero evidence that vaping causes secondary vapor problems, that you're hurting someone else.
Absolutely,
who inhales a little bit of your vapor.
You do get people,
like
you do get people who
cloud.
puff out huge clouds of it, and that can be kind of annoying if it stinks of blackcurrant and so on. Usually they're the ones that actually don't include nicotine, funnily enough. So you can inhale a huge amount and then exhale a huge amount like some kind of dragon. They can be kind of antisocial. I think probably those people can be dealt with without.
Yeah, I mean, I am a little sympathetic with people who don't want to smell, pina colada.
Yeah.
While they're eating sushi or something.
Are you aware of Michael Bloomberg's role in all this anti-vaping hysteria worldwide?
Oh, he's one of the culprits.
I mean, he spent an unbelievable amount.
And also Bill de Blasio, who made it illegal to buy flavors at all in New York City. You can only buy tobacco flavor.
Well, Bloomberg himself has put in $120 million worldwide just on the campaign for banning flavors, let alone anything else, let alone all the money he's put in for soda taxes and other e-cigarette restrictions. $120 million goes a long way in public health advocacy. And you can
produce a lot of propaganda with that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's
lies.
Really scandalous, yeah. And it's lies that have led to, as I say, even in England, people's knowledge has gone backwards on e-cigarettes. And funnily enough, you mentioned nicotine before. It doesn't seem to be widely known that nicotine is effectively safe insofar as it doesn't cause any diseases. Even if you do surveys of doctors, and this has been true all around the world for a long, long time, most doctors think that nicotine causes cancer.
Really?
So if you've got doctors who believe that, what hope for everybody else?
Well, if you enjoyed that conversation, why not watch one of these other videos? And while you're here, remember to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss out on a single IEA broadcast.